going to go ahead and get started. But one thing that I will also mention that Megan, as I understand, based on my interactions with Megan, some part of our organizations are also overseas. So many times people may think of offboarding as if like only the retirement kind of scenario or involuntary termination kind of scenario. But many times offboarding also is that somebody's moving from, they were maybe in the South Africa office and now they're moving to the Geneva office. So if they, that means that the South Africa office now has to take over all the material that the person had while they were there, and now they have to get onboarded again, even though they're not changing the employment, but still they could be part of a new legal entity, new tax entity. They maybe have a new tax regime, new tax forms to fill out, even though still work for the same organization, let's say IBM, and then but you're changing offices, there are implications. So all of those employee transitions are what we're going to talk about. And thank you everyone, for everybody who joined in so quickly on time, because we've been talking for a few minutes here. And all those slow starts on the webinar, they really drive me crazy when I join webinars. So I'm sure you guys are the same way. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here just for us to give some structure to it, but the material we continue with whatever we are discussing here already with Megan here. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the slideshow mode for all of you guys here. Okay. Okay, sorry, I had already jumped ahead. Yeah. Okay, so this is what we're gonna talk today. Okay, so Megan and I are gonna team tag here. So we basically want to talk to you about the complete employee journey. When employee transitions happen, if turnover happens, what's really the true cost? What's the opportunity of that turnover? Why sometimes employees leave? Now, I do recognize that many of the people who are joining here are from the HR departments. And so in that sense, we're all peers here. We're all looking at the scenario together on, why people leave. Should we do something to be able to stop them? How we can reimagine the exit experience? What is the alumni effect that sometimes people have? Even, we had a very good scenario. Somebody tell us that one of their VPs left the organization, the customer organization, because their spouse was taking a significant role at another commercial bank in another state. But when they left, the person left, but they were such a good fan of their organization that even though they left themselves, they were actually able to give many good referrals, and one of those referrals ended up joining the organization. So the organization felt that it was such a good experience for them that the person who left and the person who joined, they were, I wouldn't say necessarily, or I don't know necessarily if they were close friends, but the fact that they had worked together many years prior, it felt a different level of continuity. And if this person who was leaving had not received such a great exit experience, who knows, maybe their motivation to, go above and beyond to identify the successor may not have been as much. So this is definitely an opportunity for all of us in HR to provide the employees, the leaving employees, a phenomenal exit experience that can really heighten the alumni effect for us, and how this exit data can essentially turn into an organizational, real intelligence asset here that we can go from. Okay. And I just realized that the webinars, I believe, are automatically recorded, right? So I just want to make sure that, yeah, they're being recorded. So I think we're in good shape there. Sorry, I switched here. Okay. So first of all, we're just going to start with this simple poll here, just to make sure we understand what is the biggest missed opportunity during offboarding in your organization here. Here, you can think about any aspect here, whether you felt some employee told you that, or just from your own experience here. So let me launch that poll here, so you can respond to it. And as soon as we have 50% coverage here, I'm gonna move on. So please, you guys have 30 seconds. Let's go respond quickly to this poll here and then I'll share the results as well at that point. So see what other people are saying. So some people have started to respond, under 10% still, okay, above 10% now. So what's the biggest missed opportunity during offboarding in your organization? Okay, I think we have a good percentage here. I'm going to maybe give people final 5 seconds. We'll end the poll here. Okay, so I should be able to share the results. Let me know if you're able to see it. But while we're looking at the results here, definitely more people, Megan, as you're probably able to see, more people definitely leaning towards the second and the first choice here. So essentially maintaining alumni and rehire potential candidates who maybe worked here in the past. So are you surprised by those? I was frankly, I just assumed maybe this is all of this AI stuff really affecting all of us, that a lot of companies trying to solve this problem. But I assumed that number three would have been the one with the highest votes. But
Same.
23%, not zero, but certainly that's the third in the sequence here. What do you take away?
Yeah. I also would have, if I was able to respond as a panelist, I probably would have selected ensuring knowledge transfer and continuity. I think that that's something that could be improved in a lot of organizations. I am very surprised to see capturing valuable feedback and insights coming into that second category. For the folks that answered that way, I think that there's ways that that could easily be addressed, even potentially through Clay, we'll see. But maintaining alumni and rehire potential, that also speaks volumes, I think, right? I feel I'm very fortunate in the last two organizations, the one I'm in now, as well as the one I worked in previously. Um, we have strong alumni networks. But the way in which you develop that alumni network really stems from your culture, right? Your culture, and the way that employees feel while they're with you. So yeah, I'm a little surprised by these, but I think that these are things we can definitely talk about.
Wonderful. That's actually very exciting for me. I mean, when this mention of alumni was there, we were not even thinking about the alumni aspect that people use ClayHR for. There are organizations that use ClayHR as their alumni management system because they hide the employee directory, give people a feel to interact with each other. People can always find whatever information they want to share with each others. So that's very interesting. Now,
Mhm.
uh, if that is the highest, the element of most interest here, then certainly for people who responded, if they're interested in learning a little bit about, even though that's not what today's webinar was about, but if the alumni management system is what they are thinking of, that's something interesting, again, we can definitely follow up and have that discussion. But certainly I can at least theoretically understand that from the HR perspective, some employee worked with the organization for, let's suppose, for 5 years. They ended up moving, and certainly why should you lose that connection? That person already has a good working relationship with their team. And
Mhm.
just because they had to move away, maybe there are other opportunities down the road which they can come back to. I think that's a great way here. All right, thank you
Mhm.
everyone who responded to us here. So it's let's just get started here. First of all, on the power of departure here, that from the HR perspective, we always want to be able to not just see that, okay, now this chair is empty, which we now have to refill, which I know it's operationally this takes over. This is sort of our almost the HR mammalian brain, right? We
Yeah.
say, oh, we got to do this thing because that's now a task for us.
Right.
That's now our task. We got to get the position approved. Now we got to chase the finance to sign off. Now we got to chase the CEO to sign off. Now we have to publish it. And now we don't get enough candidates. Then we have to sponsor here. We have to do there. Then we have to chase the interviewers. Then we have to chase the offer letters. And I'm sure that all of that is already going through your head. You see an empty
Yes.
here and you're like, there's so much going on there. And sure, the talent acquisition part, as we have covered in other webinars, and I know the very last one or the two before we talked about the AI assessment of candidates when they come in, etc. Those are all good things. But today,
Mm.
we will not jump into that operational mammalian brain of HR, but we'll just say, okay, for a moment, let's just see, is this something that we could have avoided? We should have avoided. What could we have done better? And that's the main part we want to see about. seeing a mirror here. I mean, Megan, you might give me a different spin on it to say, do we even have time? But if we have a little bit of time when some exit happens, especially an unplanned exit happens, is it something that we are able to do at that time?
I mean, here at Tweezerman, my team, we always do our best to make that time. While it's, we're a lean team here, we're balancing a million different hats. I think anybody in HR can understand that. Um, it's so critical to make the time to have those conversations with those people that are leaving the organization when you can, when it makes sense. So in those involuntary situations, you may not find that necessary. But when you get a resignation from someone, it's really an opportunity to reflect back on what's working in your culture and what isn't. And you have an opportunity to really look inward and address potential issues that you might not have been aware of in HR. You don't know if you don't ask. So having those exit interviews is important. And I don't know if I'm skipping ahead here, Amrinder, but the way
A,
we do it here, oh, I am.
a little bit, but that's okay. But that's okay. We're right on the next slide here, which is I think you're saying all the right things here. But I did want to interject for one moment that I want you to complete your thought on the exit effect, because you mentioned a very important point about the HR team being stretched thin. I remember in 2 or 3 webinars, one of the persons, very smart young lady who is, I think she's on this webinar as well, but I'm not sure. I did not see her name. She wasn't there. So I asked her, I said, hey, well, you didn't ask any question. And she said to me, she said, Amrinder, I just felt a little conscious because, our HR department is really small. Like, they were part of a 3 people HR team. And I said, you don't need to worry, because a lot of your peers who are here are all in the same boat. We are all in the same boat. We are always being asked to do more. And our teams are, sometimes people are in teams of 1, teams of 2, teams of 3, teams of 4, teams of 5. And that's pretty much starts to taper off. There are very few people who are doing like a large HR team of like more than 10 people. So
Mhm.
no, like you heard Megan say the same thing, that, we're always going to be like, we're always going to be stretched thin, a lot of new things being asked of us to do, but we have to do within our small team here. So don't hesitate. But yeah, Megan, go ahead, complete your thought on the exit process as well. But I did want to piggyback on that, the small team being asked to do more concept, which I'm sure a lot of our attendees are also always going through there.
Yeah. I mean, just to talk on that real fast, I'm part of a team of 3. I head up HR here, and I have 2 direct reports, one who's specific to payroll, and then my generalist who helps me tackle everything else under the HR umbrella. And it's definitely tight. My previous organization, I was one of 16, right? We had 16 people in our HR department, and that covered both the US and Canadian region, but for 4,000 employees. So there you're still kind of stretched thin a little bit, depending on who you ask. But yeah, so here at Tweezerman, when it comes to an exit strategy, it's a missed opportunity if you don't find the time and make the time to have those conversations. And we've kind of found a way to streamline that process because we're so limited in time and resources, right? To have those conversations. And I don't want to get too far ahead on how we've streamlined that, but
No, but I mean, you're right that with the if you come up with a process, or I would say even a process template, and we'll walk through
yep.
that. Many of the people here, as many of the names I recognize, that I know that they are already champion ClayHR users, so they already know. Some of them who have also implemented pretty intricate workflows, but some people may not have, because everybody, as you know, every HR department there's always so many things. Maybe you've been focused on hiring or performance or something else, that maybe you haven't really paid a whole lot of attention to workflows yet. We'll talk about it, but to mention this point about a template, a process template, once you have it created, it's a great starting point. And we say that no templates is ever perfect, but
Mm-hmm.
templates are generally very useful. So
Mm-hmm.
even the very first time you do it, the whole idea is that do the same process twice. First, create it as a template, and then run it for the person who's leaving, because your template will at least get you 60% of the way. And
Yep.
the next time somebody happens, and I'm sure that, Megan, your own template, you've probably seen it evolve over time. I mean, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because when you start to have your template, you start your conversations and you start the process somewhere, you learn as you go. And you learn that maybe you might have had some gaps in your original template, things that you want to cover, that you want to include. And so it's definitely something that should evolve over time, I would say.
Yeah. And I want to get into, everyone knows me. I mean, at tech, I always want to get into, or like, let's see the process tech here. But before I get into that, because, we could spend a whole lot of time here on that, but I do want to address two important points we've just touched upon. One of them is, why do we think employees really leave? I mean, it's not news to anybody here on the organization, on this particular webinar. Everybody knows, but it's a good idea for us to again touch through all of those items, because this opens up our mindset on what different things could be. Many times, and again, I'm sure that when you look through it, you can add 7 more items to why employees leave, and I can at least add 2 more to it already.
Yeah.
So again, let's do that first, and then we talk about the alumni effect before we really get into the tech of workflows and all of that, which we can really spend a lot of time on. But Megan, when you look at these things here, would you say, even not even considering the order of how these are laid out, but would you say these are some of the top items why employees really leave?
Yes, I would agree with this list here for sure. And to your point, I don't think there's any right order. I think if you're in HR for some time, you're going to see these topics be points that come up during your exit interviews and your discussions as people choose to leave your organization for sure.
And two more reasons which we should totally put. And if for people who are familiar with the retention management module, they might have seen that at least there are 2 more factors that are clearly laid out there. One of them is called just the logistics reason, and the other is the family reason. So for
Personal.
example,
Yes.
personal/family reasons. Personal/family reasons could be that somebody's spouse, they either getting into a new relationship, getting married, so they're moving to a different place, or
Hmm.
or they're joining their spouse somewhere else, or whatever it is. There could be a lot of other reasons. uh, I heard one person, while they were just running their workflow, they mentioned that this person was just moving back to their hometown to be closer to where their parents were, who needed more attention, and
Hmm.
their HR was very supportive of that transition. So there can be a lot of other things. Now, we've also seen some interesting reason. One person, this company is from Lagos, and they mentioned that the person left just because the traffic pattern had changed so much in 3 years, that when they joined that company, they had neither moved nor the company had moved. But when they joined that company, the commute was a certain duration. Said, "Ah, I can live with that."
Hmm.
And 3 years later, the commute is about twice as bad.
Mm.
That commute is so nothing has changed on their
From an
circumstance or
right.
the companies. Now, I'm sure that that's usually could be one of the many factors. I'm sure the company could have either, sweetened the payoff, or the person would have stayed on, okay, saying, okay, now it's taking me 1:15 instead of 35 minutes to get there, but okay, I'll stay there. But at least it's a factor sometimes. So be open to that idea as well. But if anybody wants to, while we haven't really started the full Q&A session here, um, if anybody wants to, okay, I do see that some people are also asking questions. I'm just looking through the questions here already. Will we receive the slides, etc.? I'll address that, and yes, you'll receive the slides and the recording. But while we are here, if you could add any other item that you think is your understanding of why employees leave, please feel free to use the Q&A box and to mention that here as well. Um, and
I'm
Paul
looking through.
mentioned something about the Kearney perspective. Okay, that's interesting as well. Okay, great. So So these are many reasons that employees leave. Again, as HR, it behooves us to really understand what are different places, so we can then use that to our to our advantage, making sure that we are able to address the different things here. Okay, so now let's go to the alumni effect. So when people leave on good terms, they don't really leave. I know, Megan, you already addressed this thing. I also mentioned that via the example. But do you see that as a big opportunity for a lot of organizations? I mean, this, by the way, is the same point I think that Paul mentioned it in the Q&A slides here. He mentions that this is a great place to be and a great place to be from. So
Mm.
there's a certain kinship. He's talking about A.T. Kearney, but the point there being that, that people say, okay, oh, you also used to work there. I also used to work there. Even though we never worked there together, the alumni effect is really strong there. Um, I don't know. Do you see that as a big, as a, as a big factor as well?
I think that, so honestly, that's something that's new to me where, oh, I've worked there and you've worked there. Oh, nice to meet you. And, some kind of camaraderie from that respect. I've not personally dealt with that. What I've dealt with is this concept of boomerang hires and referral sources. And those are two areas that, I mean, companies should be very proud of. Something that I was definitely proud of in both this organization and my last. While I haven't seen too many boomerang hires at Tweezerman, that's something that I saw a lot in my previous organization. I'd worked for that larger construction company. And, we had tons of people that left, and within a year they'd come back because the grass just wasn't greener where they had gone off to. But it speaks a lot to the organization that they'd be willing and wanting to come back. Um, Referral sources I've seen in both, and here at Tweezerman, just the more recent one was actually on my team. When I moved into head of HR, the person who was in my previous role prior to me joining Tweezerman had recommended two people to my HR generalist position that was open on my team. And that speaks volumes, right? Having ex-employees come in and or not come in rather, but send people your way when you're recruiting to say, hey, I know this person and they said that Tweezerman is amazing, and that I really should consider this opportunity. It goes a long way. Um, Having those connections, put those people forward in front of us in HR. And also, you have some level of trust too, with those kinds of candidates that get through the process and come on board. You know that there might potentially, hopefully, is some kind of alignment already with your culture. If those previous employees were also aligned, you're a step ahead when you bring those people on board, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it does. I mean, there's a lot of that. It's a clear opportunity, at least, right, to
Mhm.
consider, and then you
Mhm.
use what's there. Wow, a lot of interesting comments there in the chat too, Q&A too. I'm really getting a lot of interesting insights here. I'm gonna quickly go to the next part here in terms of two different capabilities I want to mention here, and we come back to the stories because I think stories is where the fun is. I quickly mentioned two things here. And many people here, I'll go actually directly into the system. I'm gonna see if I can log, if I'm still logged in, and hopefully everybody is able to see my demo interface here. So, and again, a lot of people who are logged in, I know that they're already Power ClayHR users, so they're reading more comments. Yeah, they're already Power ClayHR users, so they know more about it than I think I ever will. But here in the one of the first things I just mentioned is that a lot of organizations who use the alumni system in ClayHR, what they do is they have their main account. Let's suppose you have acmecompany.clayhr.com, and they have an alumni account, which is acmecompanyalumni.clayhr.com, which is they house all their terminated employees where they can actually interact with each other. And they usually will appoint one moderator who is just there to kind of see what people are talking about, et cetera, et cetera. They'll open up some kind of a board for people to interact with. They'll launch some surveys from time to time just to keep that alumni engagement. They'll use an announcement feature to post some kind of a newsletter talking about how the Acme company is now doing, if they have received their new financial results or things like that. So again, we're not talking too much about the alumni system today, but based on all the interest that I mentioned right from the
Mm.
first poll question, I just thought, okay, we'll mention it again. So just to summarize, if you were to do then alumni, like, like here you're looking at all the active employees, but let's suppose you go to inactive employees, then you would have all of them here for your core HR system, but you would have something like Acme Company alumni.clayhr.com, which is where all these people are mentioned as the alumni people, and they can interact with each other and share whatever they feel comfortable sharing with each other. Some people would say, hey, don't call me, don't contact me, and some people would say, hey, here's my LinkedIn, let's get together for drinks next time you're in Seattle, I'm very happy to meet with you.
Right.
I'm mostly traveling most days, but on Wednesdays and Fridays I'm very open to meeting other people. So people will post there, and I've seen all kinds of variations of people who are basically uh, at least like there's some people who jump from like some corporate job, they went to real estate, so they're always meeting people because that's how they're getting new customers.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not necessarily sure that everybody wants to meet with them, because if you're not buy or sell, but be that as it may,
Right.
and alumni side is a great way for people to at least have, at least for the HR to say that, hey, to their C-suite, saying, hey, we launched an alumni site, we never had it before. Many times for customers that are not very large, let's suppose less than 5,000 employee customers, which is a majority of them, then they will
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, we did not have the bandwidth to launch a alumni site, but with ClayHR they can just launch it already because all the data is already there. Just launch
Mm-hmm.
it. It's not a high maintenance activity because people will usually talk to each other alumni site, but they will generally post one newsletter there on the alumni side maybe once a quarter,
I see.
keeping everybody informed, saying this is what it is, guys, and then you will just enjoy there, and then you'll leave it be, right? You'll leave it be because they're your role. They're not your active employees at this point. They're doing what they're doing. It's a bit of a social network, but this is the place where you as the HR still get to at least gather, and then if you are able to scan that information and identify any boomerang employees,
Mm-hmm.
identifying any candidates, that's a great way. That's a great win here, right? I know
Yeah,
there are a lot of
yeah.
questions coming in, but before I take the questions, I have to address to you the second main tech part of it, and we get right to the questions. And Megan has more stories to tell, so I'm going to go back to that as well. But let me quickly tell you the other part of it. As you know, in ClayChar, we're not really covering everything else today. We're not talking about in fact, this was what we just discussed the other time, skills and learning. Oh, I know Megan's actually deep into that, so I'm going to really skip it entirely, or the allocation, hiring piece, all of that. We're not really discussing all of that, but I am going to just talk about odd time and attendance. And I know that in this moment in time, there are so many customers who are just launching their clocks and expense reports and the leave programs here, because that usually is a Q4 kind of activity. A lot of time, especially the new customers in ClayHR who have now getting their system ready for their employees to do all of that. Again, please talk to your customer success managers, etc. They'll cover that. Today we will focus just on the workflow, okay? Because that's the part we're talking here today. So again, you would come to it via the workflow view here. And within the workflow view here, if again, for people who are less familiar with it, once in the workflow view here, you can actually go into your workflow designer by going to the manage workflows page here. You can actually see more workflows if you're not searching for anything. So you will just organize your workflows by different types here, and you can see, okay, which are status, which are archived, etc., etc. If you just want to focus on just the hiring ones here, just the onboarding ones here, just search for the right one. You can watch a little tutorial. You can access a global library of some curated workflow templates, so which you can take over, import them, and then start modifying them. As you're familiar with the global library concept in ClayHR, it works the same way here. Okay, right now though, let's look at some kind of a transition here. Let's look at an offboarding one here. As you may know, you can create workflow duplicates here by creating one version of the workflow and then copy to create another workflow. Right now, let's just look at the workflow here. This workflow right now I'm in the workflow designer. So I'm looking at this particular workflow design here on how many different sections, how many different phases that this particular workflow has. In each phase, you can have different steps. And this is the important point, that steps can be of different type and the steps can be assigned to different people. Okay. So let me just repeat that part of it, because if you have always used workflows that are assigned to the people and the person themselves only, the let's suppose the employee who's leaving the organization or the person who's retiring, in ClayHR, the workflows are distributed workflows. So that means you can be assigning it to the person, or maybe something assigned to manager, or something assigned to HR, or something assigned to finance. You will create that here. Okay. So this is what the workflow is, and whether the workflow is itself is visible to the person or not, you can choose those settings. What's the purpose? You can say, okay, this is an offboarding workflow, etc. You can do that. And if you want certain people to be able to have some permissions, you'll say, yes, the HR is going to be able to really manage the workflows, this particular workflow and the execution of it, etc. You can do those settings. Right now, though, let's go into this particular workflow here and see what does it look like when it's assigned to a person. Okay, so this is the offboarding workflow for one person who is leaving at a certain point, and we can then go into that employee record and see more details about it, if there's more details shared about it on, what they are, where they currently work, when is it that they're going to leave, what the projected end date is, etc. And then who this workflow is assigned to from a coordination perspective. So in this case, Emma from the HR team is going to be coordinating it. As you know, you may have many different HR team members, especially if your HR team is, let's say, not a team of 1 or 2, but let's suppose you have 6, 7 people. You say, okay, this person's going to coordinate this offboarding while this person's coordinating another onboarding, offboarding. So people are still able to do their work, in a different way, right? Now, in each of those things, you can have a work items of different types here. You could say this is a form that they have to fill in. There's an exit interview form that they have to fill in, or somebody has to just acknowledge a document. Somebody has to upload the document of, whatever it is. So all of those things that you can do, you are able to do here in this screen to say what the different steps are. Now, let's suppose that Michael, now not going by Michael's picture, but just to show as an example, let's suppose this was Michael's retirement, right? So you're saying the Michael's taking an early retirement. I'm just gonna give specific user. Maybe in our case, this person here, Amy, loves to organize the parties here, right? So Amy's gonna be organizing a farewell or a graduation party or a retirement party for Michael here, right? And then this is just assigned to Amy, and we're gonna say, yes, Amy, you gotta better get this thing before this person leaves. And I'm saying, okay, before this person leaves, okay, sometime before that, just please go ahead and take care of that. Now, Amy has an extra step. Now, in this case, what I did was I essentially added a new step to this running workflow. I could also have done differently and just added this step as a step and let me go ahead and say, no, actually, Amy herself is so busy here. Amy's not, let me put this here. I think this is some older data here. Let me change this to 2025 and change this to 1231. And let me actually assign this not to Amy, but let's go to maybe to Joseph. Joseph's gonna do that one because Amy's so busy. So you are always in charge of your workflows. You can say who's going to do that, what part is who's going to handle that part of it. And you can now you can see here that in this particular offboarding workflow, this task is now assigned to Joseph with the new deadline because now Joseph has some extra time here. So just in a nutshell, keep this in mind, that use the offboarding workflows. Exactly like Megan said, use a template. Because if you have a template, your template, even if you don't have a template today, start with a very basic template. Go to the workflow library, create one of the from the global library, just bring in one offboarding template, and over time you will make it your own. And anytime you are doing any of the transition, employee transition, you feel like you have a new different step that applies to only in this case, go ahead and add a new step. But do give it a thought to say that, is this step really going to apply to everybody, right? If this step is going to apply to everybody, then just put that in your template. Next time you'll not have to add it this way here in this. Rather, you will just say, okay, this is part of my offboarding workflow itself. So I'm gonna go change it into right into this template here. I'm gonna say, hey, we will always be planning a retirement party, but maybe I will say that this step can be marked as not applicable. Okay, so now we're going into a little bit of advanced settings here, but I just want to mention this, that these options are there. The purpose of the webinar is not to drown people in the advanced settings, but just for you guys to go a little bit beyond scratching the surface. So again, what's the main surface is that use the templates, right? Use the process templates, create a workflow. There you can do everything with respect to your how to add this person to the alumni network, how this person should be taken through the exit interview, who should be doing the exit interview, what is the responsibility that the manager will need to have, how that person will be announced. For example, I'm going to go ahead and complete that one here, like the retirement party, plan a retirement party here. And for the time being, I'm just going to assign it to the coordinator. Who has a coordinator, they will fill it out. They might delegate it, but at least they have it. And I'm going to say, yes, this person has a, okay. So I'm going to say maybe at least 5 days prior to the assignee's end date, we should have that planned out. But yes, they can mark it as not applicable if the person's not retiring. Okay, so this is how I'm doing some of this planner retirement party. And now, as you can see here, and I can, you can, in a workflow, you can always move things around. You can move the sections, you can move the steps exactly as you want. But this is a simple way in which you would create your workflow template. And then once you're ready, you identify that this is going to be the once somebody is going to leave, you would assign them either here or in the employee record. You can also create a little bit of a section here. So let's suppose you go to your employee directory here. Let's suppose we are this person's record, Christopher's record here. And we could then say, okay, hey, this person's going to leave. So I'm going to already go ahead and assign them this workflow. Okay. Same workflow that we were doing. So because I created a shortcut in one of those advanced settings, I see this shortcut here. If you don't create that shortcut, that's not a very big deal at all. You can then still come in and you can say, okay, this person is going to leave at some point, and I'm going to assign them this particular workflow. And then it'll ask me, okay, who would like to coordinate? What is Christopher's last date? I'll go ahead and assign that. And now we have an offboarding planned out for Christopher. So normally all your offboardings should just follow this simple process of launching the process here. Okay, like I said, I want to take a few minutes for the tech, but that's about it. Okay, we're back to stories, we're back to questions. Let's go back to it here. I won't even worry about the slides here because I know there are a lot of questions that you guys have already asked. So I just want to mention again, I'll leave this slide on as our anchor on what we're looking at. The exit tells a story, but let me look through your questions here and see what we can take. Okay. Megan, do you want to have any other points from the template or any other words of advice before I start, writing the questions to back and forth here?
Do I have anything to add? So we at Tweezerman are working on building out our workflow in Clay. But currently, we do some things outside of the system, one of which is our exit interview form. And just a tidbit for people that are on the call. I don't know how everybody administers their exit interviews, but what we've done is created our interview on a a document template that we send to employees in advance of their last day. In the case that we have a resignation, we've got 2 weeks notice, we send out the interview form with questions that they can review and respond to, right? But we still set up a face-to-face conversation with them before their last day, giving them a few days time to review that template, maybe fill it in on their side, and letting them know that when we meet in person later this week before your last day, we're going to speak to this document. And it allows them some time to think on it, think about the questions. What was working? What wasn't working? How was your onboarding? How was your orientation? Did you get proper training? Were your expectations met? These kinds of things are included in the template. And I've just found it to be very helpful, allowing employees that personal time to reflect and think on it, not right in front of me or in front of their manager. They have it, they have that time. And then you can further hone in on it. If they fill it out in advance, they might quickly go through. It was good, it was good, it was good. But having that face-to-face interaction with them later in the week, closer to their departure date, right? So they're not going to be worried about what anyone on their team might think or what I may think, because they're already 1 foot out the door at this point. You have an opportunity to really hone in on those questions and say, hey, I see you wrote good here, but can you tell me a little bit more about it? Why wasn't it excellent? What could we have done differently to get a better score in this area? That kind of thing. So that's how we run it. That's what I found successful, where I've gotten that the most out of those conversations that we could take back to leadership and take back to my team on areas for improvement. So just wanted to share that.
No, I mean, that's a great story because of two reasons. One, it shows how Megan and the organization is always trying to, to take that next step, because, improvement is always a journey. It's not we go from 0 to 100, but you're always taking the next step. Also, how Megan explained, like, where I see a lot of times HR leaders will say, "Oh, we have this part in Clay, and this part is still sitting somewhere else." And don't worry, this you don't have to. That's also a journey. Many times
Yes.
organizations will have hundreds of forms, and by now maybe they have migrated 50 of them, but still are 50 are somewhere else, because it's not a question of us just saying, "Oh, I can implement that form in ClayHR for you." You say, "Yes, I understand, but I still have there are the processes in place here that we have to measure the change of those processes as well, to
Mhm.
make sure that the people know that that's where the form is, and that's where the form is going to come to them for
Right.
approval now." So there's change management, and HR is, change management is our biggest part as HR. 60% of our work is change management. In fact,
Mhm.
one change we're discussing today is the employee transition, which itself is a big change for the employee. So that's just a part of it as well. Okay, there are quite a few questions here, and I'll also launch the next poll while I take a couple of those questions here. Let me launch the poll here as well, and then I'll take two questions here. I did not realize I was still sharing the results of the previous poll. Were they still coming here? I don't know if they were in the way of people being able to see it. Okay, so you should see another poll question here, poll
Yeah.
question 2 on your screen. But in the meantime, let me take one or two questions here as well. Megan, I really like this question. This is from a very, very, very famous attendee by the name of Anonymous Attendee. Um, they did not dis but the question is really clever. I think they did a very, uh, I can maybe guess why they didn't want to think about why to disclose the name, but they said, how do you communicate exit insights in a way that drives positive culture change instead of making anyone defensive, right?
Mm,
So I think that's a tricky one.
good question. It is tricky. Because you can't always predict how a manager or leadership might react to hearing transparent feedback from someone who's leaving the organization.
Or
Um,
from HR indirectly passing that feedback.
correct, correct. So Something that I learned from my mentor. I've had a few mentors in my career, but Donna Reuter was the head of HR here at Tweezerman for many years, and she has retired, and I've succeeded her. But something I learned from her was that a way to think of it and way you should think of it is feedback is truly a gift, right? So going into these conversations with managers and leadership and sharing feedback through these exit interviews, I always like to start the conversation there. If I know that it's going to be a tough delivery, just reminding everybody that this feedback is a gift. Also, always trying to start in a positive place. Maybe some positive points came out of those conversations. Start there. Say, hey, here's what was working, right? You did a great job at setting expectations. You did a wonderful job at giving positive feedback, and that really went a long way with this individual. But through this conversation, there were some areas that we could work on, and here's where those areas are. Um, Talking about those positive things first can really just start the conversation in a good place, and maybe you won't get such a defensive response um, when you start to lay down the more difficult things that they have to hear.
That's, I think those are very good points there. I did share the poll question 2 results, so if you want to take a look at, but I did see that the same topic, piggybacking on what you were discussing there, Megan, that the manager training for exit conversations is the top area which people are trying to strengthen. So almost going directly into that. Exit analytics also being, the second in line there. And I think the automated workflows that I believe that because many of the people who are here are, sort of power users, for them, this is almost table stakes at this point, I believe. So I have 3 questions here, which I think we can take, but I do know that we only have about 5 minutes left. So we're going to try to just take them as much as we can here. I'll mention all 3 questions to you. Feel free to take them in any order, Megan, that you think you and I can team tag them. But one person, I think the same person also mentioned that referrals are good, but casting the net wide is better. So referrals can often water down your DEI initiatives by hiring the same people. So, okay, that's a good point
Interesting
here.
take.
So that's not specifically a question, but I think that's a good point here. There are 3 or 4 questions actually then. One question related to this one, I'll go first, is are there measurable differences in rehire success or referral quality from engaged alumni versus new hires? Okay. I don't know if that's an easy question. I know it's related, but I don't know if I don't know, Sam, that if even I at the platform level could necessarily see that there is going to be there could be data in the system, because if, let's suppose, okay, sorry, I'm trying to think about what's the mathematical formulation of your question. Is the mathematical formulation here that we look at all the candidates, see the ones that have a referral source defined, see the ones who don't have defined, and then see if there's a measurable difference between, whether set A or set B has a higher likelihood of getting all the way to the higher stage, right? Now, it does not, this formulation that I've just given does not actually say anything about alumni versus non-alumni, but it could be your existing workforce. So I think though your question is general, I think that data you can definitely get from your ClayHR report. So just generate a report with the candidate, with the referral source, and then see the final status, the final disposition. That ought, even with those 3 or 4 columns, and you don't even care about the candidate name in that case, because you're just looking at from a statistical variance perspective. I think that data you can do. I don't know the answer, but at least that's the mechanism by which you can get that. You can get the data from your environment. Again, if you need help, reach out to reach out to the CSMs, reach out to me, and we can help you with that, getting the data out and then running that analysis with you. How do you get leadership buy-in for this question is from Michael? How do you get leadership buy-in for turning exit data into strategic intelligence rather than administrative reporting? Okay, so the point is that just don't report it, right? I mean, what's a strategic intelligence? So does HR really need leadership buy-in? I'm interested in what Megan has to say, but I will say before that HR should normally not always be looking for administrative buy-in. You know, HR already has the administrative buy-in, in the sense that if the administration knows the HR is conducting an exit interview, is conducting an exit offboarding workflow, it is implied that HR is going to collect some data and then is going to share some results. The changes that the organization may want to make, those surely you want to get through buy-in, but just for strategic intelligence, you already have. We as HR should definitely stop thinking, oh, we have to go to the C-suite for every single thing just to analyze. We should do it. We can analyze it. Tools are there. We're here. We're all here to help each other. We analyze it. Then we go back to the C-suite with any item. We think that having a water cooler here would be a great idea. And then maybe that's a question. Again, Megan, I don't know how you think about it.
No, I would agree with you 100%. You have to be able to take the leap sometimes, and think about the tools that are already at your disposal. To Amrinder's point, these tools are already available to you where you have the opportunity to administer some level of strategic intelligence to gather data, and that data is what you would then use to get that leadership buy-in for any additional changes that you would want to make. Um, I would agree with you for sure.
Yeah. And I know that we thought we'll take one more question, but I know we are at time. I don't want to overstay, and I know people have other meetings to
Yeah.
go to. But one thing we will quickly do right before we wrap up here is we will drop our LinkedIn's here. I know I'm already connected to most people here on the or who did join the webinar today, but I'll drop it here um, in the Q&A here as well. And how do okay, I can put that in the chat and you guys can all see the chat here. And Megan, if you can do the same. So feel free to connect with us. I know we couldn't take quite a few more questions that were there. William was asking about emerging technologies, but I know people have other meetings to run off to. So we will just leave that here, and then please route some more questions back to us via LinkedIn or via the CSMs, and we'll try to get back to you on those. Everybody who did register will receive the slides and the recording. So again, thank you everyone for being a part of this conversation. I know this time is always short. There's always more and more stories to tell. But thank you so much, Megan, for sharing with us your own insights and the insights from Tweezerman. I mean, it's a great brand, but your own story is very fascinating as well. So
Thank you for having me. I'm super glad to have been here. It was nice speaking with everybody, and I shared my LinkedIn as well, so feel free to reach out. But thanks so much, Emrinder.